Hey guys, welcome back. Orbomb here, bringing you a very different video today. Today we're actually going to be talking about all the Lost Thunder decks that I've been playing recently, all the things I've been recording. I've actually played pretty much everything that there is to play, whether I've been testing with the deck or just building it and like giving my first impressions off the deck and stuff like that. So it's going to be pretty different. Sit back, relax, open up a different tab if you want to, if you don't care about looking at the slideshows and stuff like that. And let's just get into this, but a couple things first. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, as always, at Guardian Gaming. Great place to shop for codes if you guys are interested in Lost Thunder codes or anything like that. It's a lot of my viewers have been really loving the sponsor. So once again, if you want to get, this is brand new by the way, if you want to get 5% off everything you buy there, use code ORBOMB and then they'll give you 5% off. I think that's pretty cool that they did that for us. Apparently a couple of you have already done it without me even announcing it, which I think is really funny. But shout out to the sponsors. This is going to be like really similar to an Omnipoke video. If you guys don't know Omnipoke, they're another amazing, one of my favorite TCG channels. If you guys want to go check them out, it's very much in vain. Like we take the slideshows and we discuss my findings and things like that. So once again, you can just kind of tune out, but don't forget to like the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys feel about like some of these Lost Thunder decks. Let me know if there's any decks that you've been trying that I haven't talked about in today's video. I think that's everything, so let's just get right on into it. We're going to be going in order of typing, just in the order of the set list, I should say, with the first one being Lost March, mainly because it's grass type, right? They got that jump off. Now, I've been playing a lot of Lost March, and I mean like a lot of Lost March. We had that first video on the channel where we played Lost March versus Buzzwole, and we forgot about the fighting resistance, which came into play. So we re-recorded it. That video will be going up in a couple of days of us re-recording that match, and it's actually a really, really fun one. But Lost March, Lost March, I like Lost March. It's a lot of fun to play. So Lost March has a lot of good matchups, right? It's a non-GX deck, so you can hit those. It's a non-GX deck that can hit OHKO numbers. I think that's the biggest benefit of playing Lost March. Between Hoppip and the Skiploom, using Skiploom's ability to put both the Hoppip and the Skiploom in the Lost Zone to set up a jump love, essentially makes you a stage 1 attacker. Attacks for 1 energy, doing 20 damage for each Pokemon in your Lost Zone that it doesn't count, that isn't a Prism Pokemon. So overall, that can rack up. If you have like the dream setup where you get all 4 of your Hoppips to evolve them all into all 4 of your Skiplooms and set them all to the Lost Zone, that is 8 Pokemon in the Lost Zone already. You're hitting 160 turn 2. That's not counting the Trumpink. The Trumpink has an ability to where you can put it from your hand to the Lost Zone. If you do, you can take a look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and if it's a supporter card, you can put it in the Lost Zone. If not, you just put it back. So if you were to do like the dream setup, you have 12 Pokemon in the Lost Zone turn 2. Now obviously that's not going to happen. In fact, in most of my testing games, I usually can get 2 or 3 Hoppips turn 2, because most of the time, since Hoppip does have 40 HP, it is going to be knocked out. So something to keep in mind. But even like turn 2, even if turn 2 you only get 4 or 6 Pokemon in the Lost Zone, you're hitting 80 to 120 damage without having to do anything else. Now we do have access to Professor Elm's new theory, or Professor Elm's theory, I think that's what the card is called. It does let you search for 3 in any combination of 60 HP or less Pokemon and put them into your hand. Now it's not basics, it is Pokemon, so you can put cards like the Hoppip and the Skiploom into your hand as well. So this deck does play 4. I feel like you have to play 4 in this deck, because if you don't, you're going to be missing them a lot more often than you want to. You do want to play like a lot of the time you want to play 2 in a row, right? So that way you can get 3 Hoppips turn 1, and then turn 2 get 3 Skiplooms. You can also have access to cards like Netball. Netball is an item card that lets you search for either a basic grass type Pokemon or a basic grass energy and put them into your hand, so you can get your Hoppips that way, and then mid game you can get your grass energies, which is why this deck is pretty nice, because you don't have to play a million grass energies to draw to them. You can actually just play like 4 Netballs and 4 grass energies, and that'll help you find both your grass energy and your Hoppips early game. So you don't actually need to play Professor Elm's theory turn 1 if you think you can draw into a bunch of Hoppips, Ultra Balls, or Netballs. I don't think this deck will need to play Nestball, because you have access to Netball already and Professor Elm's new theory. So you have access to like Ultra Balls and Netballs. So you don't have to really play it turn 1 if you're confident enough to draw into the things. I usually like to play turn 1 because I don't want to have to rely on drawing. You also have access to Natu. Natu is a really good Psychic type attacking Lost March attacker. That's your DC version. I was playing 3 in my original build, had to bump it up to 4 because I liked being able to constantly have attackers down. Because these are low HP Pokemon, you need to be able to attack. Now 40 HP on a Natu, not super great. 70 HP on a Jumpluff, not super great. So they are going to be knocked out. But having multiple attackers, and since your opponent is usually only taking one prize at a time, unless you have to play down a Lele, which you probably will be having to play down Lele because you want to use your Professor Elm and you can't just rely on getting it into your hand. You don't play Magcargo, you don't have any engine going, you have a Rangaroo in the deck most of the time, but that's about it. You also have Lost Mixer. Lost Mixer is a card that I'm always back and forth on, but the more I play, the more I realize how important it is. Lost Mixer is a card that lets you put 2 cards from your hand to the Lost Zone, then draw 1. Now, you're not always going to get all of your jump lefts out. So sometimes when it gets mid game, late game, and it's like no longer safe to put down hop ifs to try to evolve up into jump lefts, or maybe you have jump lefts stuck in your hand, you can use Lost Mixer. That's another way to get Pokemon back into your Lost Zone to help increase your damage output. So it is definitely possible to take Oko's turn 2, turn 3, but the problem is it's unrealistic because you need the perfect setup every single game, and that's where people kind of get the confusion between Night March and Lost March. Like Lost March, it's the discard pile. You have natural ways to put things in the discard pile. You back then you had Sycamore, you have Ultra Ball, Treasure right now. You even have Sightseer in this deck, which is a card that lets you discard as many cards as you like from your hand and then draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. So you have ways, but this is not the discard pile. This is the Lost Zone. We don't have many ways. We just have Hop. We have Skiploom's ability, we have Trumbeak, and we have Lost Mixer. There's other cards in this deck like Spinnerack, but those cards are not really worth playing because they don't really do anything for you as far as like move your board state along, right? But the cool thing about Lost Mixer is that you can add text. Like I'm going to be talking about some text on all these slides too. I actually made a little script, quote unquote. You can tech in things like smaller Pokemon like Vulpix. Vulpix is a Pokemon that can use Beacon. It's 60 HP or less, so you can get it with Elm New Theory. And I do like having Pokemon that you can grab with Elm New Theory because you can use Elm New Theory to get like 3 Pokemon in your hand, and then you can put 2 of them in the Lost Zone using Lost Mixer, drawing you a card. You also have cards like Marshadow, like a card you can just bench and then shuffle, draw 4. Nice disruption cards, like those things you don't have to play, and when you don't have to play them, you can put them in the Lost Zone as well. You can play Stretcher to put cards back in your hand and put them in the Lost Zone with Lost Mixer. I do think Lost Mixer is actually way more important than I originally gave it credit for, and other people are giving it credit for right now, because you do have to put Pokemon in the Lost Zone more than just using Skiploom, more than just using Trumbeak if you want to ramp up into Okos. But other things you could play in this deck, right, is you could play things like Shrine of Punishment, because you're a non-GX deck, of course. You are going to have to be, if you want to try your best to avoid playing Lele's, Shrine of Punishment wouldn't be too bad. Shrine of Punishment also helps you put things in that range, because I will say in my testing, I was playing against Buzzwole, and Buzzwole you have a really good matchup against, right? Because you have a Jump Left to deal with Lycanroc, and you have the Natu to deal with Buzzwole, and you just have 2 really good attacking options and typings. But against other decks like Zoroark or something, sometimes you're just a little bit off, and just one tick of Shrine could do it for you, especially since you attack for even numbers. You can always put in Choice Band as well. Choice Band is a card that I've been playing with. I play like a 2 of count in my list, and it's really good. You need that Choice Band. So like I said, sometimes you do need to increase your damage a little bit. Overall, I think Lost March is a really, really good deck. I think it's one of the best non-GX decks we have right now. Just, you're gonna have turns where you're not gonna be able to get up all your jump lefts out turn 2 or anything like that. So do keep that in mind. Definitely play around with this deck. It's pretty high skill to set up your board really, really well. So do keep that in mind. Anyways, I'm trying to make this video a little bit shorter, but you know, we're talking today. We're just gonna be sitting and talking. So let's go ahead and move on to another deck, Sceptile. Now I think Sceptile is really, really, really dope. Me and Nelson, we actually did a stream about talking about all these cards and how we feel about these cards. Now Sceptile here, 230 HP GX Pokemon with 2 roll cool attacks. His first attack does 60, and it discards a special energy. Now that in itself is already really strong, because being able to discard a special energy is really good against Zoroark. Eventually you'll get to a point where Zoroark can't even attack you, because you're constantly discarding their special energy, and then they have to attack like a Rangaroo, and that's really good in itself. You also have its second attack. I'm just double checking all the names here. I have Poke Beach open. Shout out to Poke Beach as always. Leaf Cyclone does 130 damage, and then you move a grass energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. So it's a good way to move your energies around, which is always nice. Hitting 130 is good. It does knock out pretty much all these good non-GX babies. You have 120 or 130 HP, so that's really good in itself. And Jungle Heal heals damage from each of your Pokemon that has any grass energy attached to them. So you can obviously see the synergy of using Leaf Cyclone, putting the energies onto your different Pokemon, and then using your GX attack to heal. It is a 1 energy attack. It's a really efficient attacker, and you have all these cool things that help the deck out a lot. You have the non-GX Sceptile. with Power of Nature, being able to make anything that has a grass energy immune to Ultra Beast, which means this is one of the only grass types in the game that doesn't have a weakness to Blacephalon, which is a deck we're going to be talking about soon, but one of the strongest, most aggressive decks in format. And after playing it, I love that deck. So having immunity to things like Blacephalon, Naganadel, Buzzwole, and any other Ultra Beast is really, really, really good in its own right, and already makes it a definite add. You have Grovyle. Now, Grovyle is a really cool ability that lets you once per turn go from your search a grass energy from your deck to your hand, which is just another way to accelerate your evolutions. It makes adding things like Lurantis, the Sunny Day Lurantis, to increase your damage output definitely possible, because you can just throw that into your hand easily. It does increase the consistency of your deck a lot. So having access to Lurantis is really good. And then you have Life Force Prism Star. That is the new stadium that can't be bumped by cards like Blower. You can only bump them with another stadium card or an attack. But once per turn, you may choose one card. Once during each player's turn, the player may heal 60 damage, remove all special conditions from one Pokemon from one of their grass Pokemon. So you can heal. You can make yourself really, really tanky. You can always play a Max Potion variant as well, because you are essentially a 1 energy attacker, 2 energy attacker, things like that. So you have access to being really tanky, which is good because you're not usually taking Okos. But if you're playing Lurantis Prism, right, you have one Lurantis Prism, you're hitting 150 with a choice band that's 180. That's really good. A 200 with another Lurantis Prism down. So you have the ability to attack for low energy while taking Okos as well, and that's really, really good in its own right. But the problem with Sceptile is that it is to be fair, just a stage 2 attacker, right? The only good fire type deck that out there are going to be cards like Magcargo, which I think Magcargo is very much slept on. It's a very, very strong deck in my testing. And Blacephalon you're not even weak to, so you only have one weakness, which is Magcargo. I think Ho-Oh is not a very good deck right now, because Ho-Oh is Ho-Oh is not in a good place because of electric power and Tapu Koko spread being everywhere. So I don't think you have to worry too much about Ho-Oh. Of course, it is still going to be a deck that's out there, right? But Sceptile has one glaring weakness, and that is it's not an Oko deck in itself unless you get the perfect setup, right? And not being an Oko deck is always bad, because then you have to fight the war of who can do the most amount of healing, which is generally a war you're fighting versus Zoroark, and Zoroark has access to Acerolas. They can play Max Potion themselves. They have access to Palpad, and they have that consistency because of cards like Magcargo. Even Zoroark Ninetales is a thing now. So we're going to talk about Ninetales later, but you have to fight a war of attrition a lot of the time, and you are getting to a KO. Now, obviously, you have the advantage of being able to discard their special energy, which is really strong in its own right, but they do have access to other attackers as well. So also, you have a full bench, which means you're probably going to be Oko'd by a Lycanroc. Lycanroc has access to cards like Counter Gain now as well, so they can attack for 1 energy. So which means you always have to be like pretty much targeting their Rock Ruffs, which you have so many cards in your deck, it's hard to be consistent. So you also don't have any like consistency boosters. Like if you can play down a Rangaroo, but by playing down a Rangaroo and by playing down Lele, your bench is being taken up by cards that aren't Sceptile and that aren't like Lurantis promo and stuff like that. So it does have a clutter aspect to it that makes it inconsistent, but when you do get the setup and you essentially stop your opponent from ever being able to Oko your Pokemon, at least your GX, right? That is really, really bad for you. They can always Oko like the other Pokemon in the back though, so do keep that in mind. Your deck isn't invincible, but it is in turn a really strong grass type deck that we needed. Not just Bulu, you know what I mean? So I think Sceptile is really, really cool. It is also weak to decks that can Oko you in turn. I'll talk about ways Blacephalon can get around Sceptile later, but cards like Rayquaza, cards like, what else? I think like Rayquaza is like the really big Oko deck that isn't Blacephalon. Maybe Magcargo could come in and Oko you as well. But Magcargo has his own issues, which we'll talk about in a second, but I think Magcargo is very strong as well. So Sceptile has his own issues, but it is a really, really cool deck. For sure. Hopefully I am recording, just double checking. All right, cool. All right, the next deck we're going to talk about is Magcargo, actually. Magcargo it's a really cool GX Pokemon. Right? It has a 210 HP Stage 1 GX Pokemon, which instantly gives it access to bodybuilding dumbbells, which actually comes in really clutch in this deck. Giving you 250 HP is really strong. Helps you deal with the likes of Lost March and overall being 2 KO'd against with some attackers, right? You have access to Ditto Prism Star as well, which lets you evolve into any stage 1 Pokemon, which is important because when you're playing a split of Magcargos, a split of Pokemon that evolve from the same Pokemon, you need that extra Ditto so that you can evolve into other Pokemon as well. So Magcargo, regular Magcargo lets you put any card on top of your deck, but Magcargo GX is where it shines. It has an ability that you can discard the top card of your deck. If it's an energy card, you can attach it to any of your Pokemon, including itself. Now, its attack is for 3 energies, fire colors, which is cool because you can use counter gain if you need to. But it does 50 damage plus 50 more for each energy you discard from your Magcargo. So if you discard 2 energies, you're hitting for 150. With a choice band, it's 180, right? If 3, you're hitting for 200. So you can actually take big Okos with this deck, and you can constantly be setting it up using your ability. Now this ability does stack, so if you were to use 2 Magcargos, GX's ability, you can attach both those energies to discard and attach them to Magcargo. So in a perfect world, you have 2 Magcargo GXs. You can use cards like Mallow to help set up the board as well, which this deck will be playing both Mallow and Magcargo because you want to be constantly putting things on top of your deck, not just using the one turn use Magcargo. So do keep that in mind. But if you have two Magcargo GXs and you use Mallow, that is 2 free attachments for your manual attachment. You have access to Heat Factory Prism Star, which is a new Prism Star. Once again, it is Scorched Earth but stronger. Discard a fire energy from your hand if you do draw 3 cards. So that's really good in its own right, helping you boost your consistency. It gives you that draw support that you need, and because you're playing Magcargo, you have the Magcargo engine. Having the Magcargo engine gives you access to cards that you could tech for matchups. Field Blower. Field Blower is really strong because we have cards like Shrine and we have cards like Spell Tech, which we'll talk about in a future slide as well. That could be really annoying for this deck. You have access to bodybuilding dumbbells, like we mentioned before, to give you a higher HP so that you can take more knockouts. And you have a very strong GX attack, which is just discard the top 5 cards of your deck. Maybe late game if your opponent gets sloppy or they're just trying to draw a bunch, you can use that GX attack. Sorry about that, guys. The biggest weakness of this deck, though, is the obvious weakness that you need a lot of setup. Because you can only play so many Slugmas, you have to... A perfect world, right? You have 2 baby Magcargos, 3 Magcargo GXs, all right, and that's literally all of your Slugmas and a Ditto. And mid to late game, you use Victini Prism. Victini Prism is actually really good in this deck because unlike Blacephalon, you're putting them into the discard pile, not the lost zone. So when you put them in the discard pile, you come in with Victini, which you can use Magcargo GX to charge up your Victini, and then attack for 20 for each energy in your discard pile, which is essentially your free turn to take a big knockout with a non-GX attacker, and then shuffle. It fills up your deck once again, and then you can, especially late game, you can do raw discards using Magcargo's ability and probably even land those energies because you have so many energies in your deck. But the bad part about the deck is you need that really good setup, and then you also need to play a lot of energy cards, which can sometimes clump up your deck, especially since you are not a basic deck, you're a stage 1 deck, and you have a 3 energy attack cost. So there's a lot going on in this deck, but obviously this deck did really well at the Tokyo Championship, and like that is worth speaking about on its own right. And I think the deck is really strong. Like, it's not as difficult as I am making it sound to get your board set up that way. And if you play cards like Rescue Stretcher, you can constantly get your cards back and stuff like that. So it is just waiting for somebody to build like the perfect deck list, the perfect, most consistent version of this deck, which I can't wait to give it a try again. I can't wait to rebuild this deck. Next deck, though, that we're going to talk about is Blacephalon Naganadel. This is my favorite deck. I have been playing this deck like crazy. I have so many different ideas as far as how I want to build this deck. But let's get on to the basics, right? Blacephalon Naganadel, you have Naganadel here. Naganadel is 100 HP Ultra Beast Pokemon, which means you have that Ultra Beast moniker. You have, you know what I didn't put in this slide was Lucamine Prism, but I'll talk about that in a second. Which means you have access to Ultra Beast cards. That is Ultra Space, which lets you put an Ultra Beast from your deck to your hand. You have Beast Ring. We all know what Beast Ring does. And we have Lucamine Prism. Lucamine Prism is actually really interesting. If your opponent has 3 prize cards remaining, you may play the Lucamine Prism, which means all your Ultra Beast cards are unaffected by attacks that turn, which means your opponent's going to have to play Guzma if you have, like, let's say a Lele down on your board. But if you have nothing but Ultra Beast down, your opponent cannot even damage you, which is really, really, really strong. It gives you a free turn to just do whatever you want, more or less. Now, Blacephalon is 180 HP, 2 retreat, which is whatever, I guess not the greatest thing in the world. Weak to water, which isn't that big of a deal because there is an amazing water decks. We are going to talk about water next in a second, but the only like great ones are Lapras, but if cards like Sceptile do well, or like Rotom and Exeggutor or other things, water's not going to be that great. But nonetheless, I think it's actually pretty good. But for 1 energy, you burn and confuse, which means you can get some chip damage off, which is really good, but its GX attack is really strong as well. For 1 energy, you can discard a prize card, which is just essentially taking a prize. If that prize is an energy card, you may attach it. So that's really, really cool. You can attach it to any Pokemon too. It doesn't have to be to yourself. So you can discard, and since this deck plays so many energy cards, you can be comfortable discarding and trying to attach an energy. But we have a new Poipole, which lets you lets you look at your prize cards. So you don't shuffle them back either. You look at them and then you put them back face down. So you can tell which one of the prizes are going to be energies, so you can use your GX attack strategically. We also have access to Naganadel. Naganadel is 130 HP, non-GX Ultra Beast Pokemon, Stage 1. Now, I'm going to talk about Naganadel a lot because Naganadel is one of these cards from the set that, in my opinion, is probably the best card in the set. It's a 3 energy colorless attack, which means you can fit it into pretty much any deck, and its ability is what makes this card so strong. Once per turn, you may take an energy card from your discard pile and attach it to this Pokemon. So you can attach energies from the discard pile to this Pokemon. Now, you are a Psychic type attack that hits for 80. 80 more if your opponent has exactly 3 prize cards, which means that you can hit 160 for 3 energies, which is so easy to do because you're accelerating from the discard pile, and then you can manually attach, and then you can accelerate again and manually attach, and then you're ready to attack. And that's what makes this card so good. You have a Psychic type attacker, which already deals with Psychic weak Pokemon, Malamar decks, and even Buzzwole, especially with a Choice Band or like a Beast Energy attack. You can OHKO Buzzwole GXs as well, which is really good because Buzzwole GX is really, really good right now thanks to Ninetales, but we'll talk about that in a future slide. But the ability to be able to put energies onto your board is important because of Blacephalon's final attack. It does, for 2 energies, it does 50 damage, and you may put as many energies on your board to the Lost Zone as you like. For each one you put in the Lost Zone, do 50 damage times the number that you put in the Lost Zone. So obviously, 4 of them in the Lost Zone equals 200 damage. You have access to cards like Choice Band and Beast Energy of your own, which means you can hit like 230, which is really, really, really strong and very consistent thanks to the fact that you have a Mysterious Treasure, Ultra Ball, all these draw cards, Heat Factory Prism Star, Ditto that can help you get out Nagas, and B-String. So you can easily ramp up energies onto your board, which is why Blacephalon is probably 100% the best OHKO deck in format right now. It's hard for me to say otherwise. I'm so confident in this deck being the most aggressive OHKO deck in format. But the cool thing about Blacephalon and Naganadel is that you have all these cool little techs you can play. You have Ditto, and whenever you play Ditto gives you this huge opening to play a bunch of different Stage 1 tech Pokemon. There are cards like Alolan Muck. Alolan Muck is the Pokemon that means all basic Pokemon have no abilities. You have cards like Salazzle GX. If you want a different fire type attacker to help you deal with cards like Sceptile, Sceptile GX, or work around Sceptile's ability. So that's really, really good. What else do you have? You have I wrote this down somewhere. You have what's that card called? Machoke, that stops your opponent from doing any bench damage through abilities or through attacks. So it helps you deal with Decidueye and stuff like that. Not like you're gonna have a huge problem dealing with Decidueye. Which is really cool. You have access to Plumeria. Now, Plumeria is another really good way to deal with Sceptile because most of the time, Sceptile decks will only have 1 energy attached to their attackers at a time, mainly because Sceptile's second attack means you have to move an energy from it to the back. So they're usually only going to have one energy at a time. You can use Plumeria to discard some energies in your hand, removing energies from the board, which is overall good disruption in general. So I feel like Plumeria is really, really good in Blacephalon. Hala is really good too because your GX attack is just so good. You can use it turn 1. You don't have to attack. You're not going to be able to take an OHKO turn 1 because of the fact that it's a 2 energy attack. So if you really want to, you lead Blacephalon, you slap an energy onto Blacephalon, use your GX attack, and then Hala is active the rest of the game. Shuffle, draw 7, that makes it the best draw supporter. So definitely Hala is definitely a really cool one. And then you have Spell Tag. One way to deal with Blacephalon is knocking out the engine. So if they want to Guzma up and knock out all of your Nagas, that's a pretty good play on their part. But if you slap spell tags onto those Nagas, you can punish them for doing that, putting them in range so you don't have to discard as many fire energies. That's another really cool tech you can add to this deck. There's so many cool options you can throw into this deck, but the biggest weakness of all is that you're kind of reliant on B-String. So if your opponent can somehow do some snipe damage that can play around B-String turns, that's kind of annoying. They can target down your engine, of course, just like in Malamar. If you target down the engine, that could always be really irritating for the deck. But the deck overall is so incredibly consistent that I don't really see these things being an issue. Now we have Sightseer as well, another draw supporter. I know a lot of these decks are playing a 4 of Sightseer. I'm not the biggest fan of Sightseer personally. I'm cutting down to 2 and I've been liking it. But Sightseer is discard as many cards from your hand if you like, and then draw until you have 5 cards into your hand. So it's a good way to keep the good pieces into your hand, discard things like energies or other useless cards in the deck, and then draw. So it's just another nice draw supporter to throw into the deck. I do like Sightseer a lot, but I don't think it's worth playing a 4 of count because you have access to Mysterious Treasure that can get your Nagas, Ultra Ball, of course. course. You have access to B-String. And you have access to Acrobike too. I don't think you really need to have Foresight Seers. But that's Blacephalon Naga. I love this deck. I shouldn't be raving about it too much because this video's already been almost 30 minutes. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to talk about water. Now water, this is something I haven't personally tested yet, but from what people that I trust have been telling me, they really like water. And there's so many cool things you can do with water. Right now we have the new Suicune, which is its ability is you can, if it's on the bench, you can choose to shuffle it back into your deck. So already you can stop a Pokemon that's been damaged and put it back into the deck, denying prize cards. As a GX Pokemon, that's really nice because denying prizes from your opponent while playing a GX mon is already really good. Let me double check that I'm reading that ability correctly. Yeah, and you shuffle all the cards attached to it back to the deck too. But we have cards like Quagsire. Now Quagsire becomes incredibly strong thanks to Naganadel. Quagsire's ability means you can move as many water energies from your bench. You can move water energy from your bench to your active Pokemon. So having the ability to use Naganadel to put energies on from your discard pile to the board, and you have access to cards like Aqua Patch in case Naganadel is not enough, means you can really load up the board with energies. We have a new Shuckle in this set. The Shuckle has the ability when you play it from your hand to your board, you can put 3 water energies from your deck to your discard pile. I don't feel like you really need that. If you play enough water energies, you have access to Volcanion Prism, which discards onto you Jet Stream, which means you can force your opponent to switch. You have Copycat, which can discard water energies, and you have a bunch of really good non-GX attacking options. We have Naga, like we mentioned earlier. We have Quagsire, which has 60 plus 20 more for each water energy attached to it. You have Volcanion that does 160 and spreads or 100 and spreads 20. Imagine if it did 160 and spreads 20. That'd be broken. We have Kyogre. Kyogre has Dual Splash, which puts 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon or hits for 130, and then you can't attack the following turn. So you have access to a bunch of different things. My bad, guys. I thought I heard something. You have access to a bunch of different great cards that can help you in like the non-GX matchups. Like maybe you're playing against spread, you don't want to have down too many GX Pokemon. So you have access to that, but you have access to 2 really strong attackers. Suicune does 120, and then it takes 30 less damage from attacks. It takes 30 less damage from attacks next turn, which is really good. You have a GX attack that does 150, and then he switches to one of your bench Pokemon. Same thing as Glitchxcity GX's GX attack. So. And that's really good because Lapras decks or water decks before didn't have any really good GX attacks either. We have Lapras here that does 160 obviously and has access to early collect in case you need to get your board state going. Ice Beam GX and Paralyze, not the best GX attack because we have Guzma and now people are playing Switch and Escape Rope, so I don't think it's ever a GX attack you want to use. But there's one card I don't have in here, Palkia GX. Palkia GX has a GX attack for 5 energies, which at first sounds really bad, but if you play Nagas, if you play Aqua Patches, you can easily put 5 energies on the board and then move them all up with Quagsire. It does 150 and shuffles back in all of your opponent's energy. So against decks like Naganadel, which if they leave extra energies on board, that could be really rough. Against Rayquaza, it's just killer. It's a really good disruption in GX attack, which you don't have to play otherwise. There's other attacks, the same thing as these other Pokemon. They have Hydro Pump and things like that. But overall, I think Water has all the tools it needs right now, thanks to Naganadel, to become a really big threat. You no longer need to play cards like Experience Share because you have Naganadel. You have a nice Psychic type attacker. You have a really good Prism Stars. And because you play Ditto to evolve into either Quagsire or Naga, you have access to, you have access to Treasure now, and Treasure can actually grab you things that aren't just Lele, like Naga and stuff like that, that can help you discard water energies. And now you have Ditto, and you can play Ditto, and then with Ditto comes Text, like I mentioned earlier, like Alolan Muck and stuff like that. So you have a lot of really good things going for you in this deck. I think Water is definitely waiting for the right deck list to be released to be really strong. We'll have to see though. I'm actually really excited to play Water again. We have another deck here, Zeraora Koko, taking the Naganadel strategy that we talked about earlier with Water, putting electric energies onto board, and then you can slap down Tapu Koko, and then move all those energies on the Tapu Koko to use attacks like Sky High Claw. But let's talk about Zeraora. Zeraora is 190 HP basic Pokemon that has 3 amazing things going for it. Its ability is anything that has an electric type energy attached to it has free retreat. Its attack that does 160, it can't attack the following turn. It's very similar to Lapras, but if you have free retreat, you can cycle between two Zeraora. And then with cards like Choice Band and Electric Power, which we're going to talk about in a second, you can really ramp up that damage. And then the GX attack puts 5 energy from the discard pile to your Pokemon in a way you like, just like Tornado. So 3 great abilities all mashed into one Pokemon. Zeraora is an incredibly strong card. It's weak to fighting, which is very unfortunate because fighting is very strong right now, but we have access to weakness policy, and we have access to Naganadel, which hits fighting type Pokemon for weakness most of the time, unless your name is Zygarde. And then we have Tapu Koko, which doesn't have a weakness. We have a bunch of really cool things going for this deck too. We have Aether Paradise, which does reduce damage by 30, meaning you're a lot tankier than you were because you're just a bunch of basic lightning Pokemon. We also have Thunder Mountain Prism, which reduces, it's a Prism Star, which reduces the cost of, reduces the attack cost of lightning Pokemon's attack by 1 lightning energy. So you can attack for only 2 energies with Koko and with Zeraora, and you get a free GX attack with Zeraora, which is really strong, because you're going to use that in turn to attach to a different Pokemon, right? Now you have access to Naganadel, which can accelerate energies on the board. It's another Ultra Beast, so if you want to, you can always play Beastring. Like having Naganadel in any of these decks means you have access to Beastring. I didn't talk about that in the water slide, but having access to Beastring is really strong to ramp up energies. And we have Electric Power, the most ridiculous card ever. The attacks of your electric type Pokemons do 30 more. It's an item card, which means they stack. If you play 4 Electric Powers, your attacks do 120 more, which is crazy to think about because Tapu Koko GX has always been a deck that's been okay. It's always been a card that's been okay. The problem with it is that it had too low HP and its damage output was too low. But now we don't have to worry about the damage output being too low because now you hit for like 160 with 1 electric power, 190 with a choice band. That's a beautiful number that OHKO pretty much all basic Pokemon that matter. So Tapu Koko GX is really good now thanks to electric power. We have access to cards like Volkner being able to be used for what it was actually meant to be used to do. Grab a really useful item card and an electric energy. So now Volkner is amazing in this deck. And we have Shuckle. Not only is Shuckle kind of good as its ability, being able to put lightning energy in the discard pile, but you also have the ability to attack with it. Shuckle's attack puts, I believe, I'm going to double check this because I have the page open, so I might as well. But it's a colorless attack, I believe. I'm going to double check though, because I shouldn't give you guys any wrong information. Let's do F3, Shuckle. All right, let's take a look. Not down here. Let's go to the top here. All right, there we go. It's for grass energy, so you're probably not gonna be able to use attack. But grass energy is attached to basic energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon any way you like. But its ability does put from your deck to your discard pile to help you accelerate, and you have Aether, which does essentially make it a 90 HP basic. There's something worth talking about there. But I think this deck is really cool. It has the tools that it needs to do well. You have ways to play around your weakness as well as OHKO potential. You can play heavy Volkner to get the right cards that you need as far as the thunder power goes and stuff like that. So I think Zeraora Koko is a very strong deck. I cannot wait to see how it does against the meta. It's just one of those decks where like it was under the radar because there was no placements for it in the top 32. We'll have to see if that's because people weren't experimenting enough with Naganadel or something like that. But I'm really excited to play Zeraora Koko again. I think the deck is really good. It does have its weaknesses though. I need to be talking about weaknesses as well because decks aren't always as good as I'm making them sound. Now water has the weakness of like, you know, setup, right? Electric kind of has the same weakness because you are playing Naganadel and you do want to make sure that your Pokemon aren't constantly being knocked out, and the stadiums can be bumped. Field Blower is kind of annoying, and you are playing heavy items, which means what's it called? Garbodor is going to be kind of problematic. But I think I don't think the deck is like those weaknesses are going to make the deck be counted out yet. So I'm really excited to play more Zeraora. Next, whoops, sorry about that, guys. Next we're going to talk about is Malamar. This is another deck I've been playing a lot of. I think Malamar is really cool. Is this okay? I must have moved it by accident. Hold on, guys. I wonder how long that's been happening. I do apologize for that. Anyways, is it just because of this slide? No. Okay, cool. Anyways, Malamar is now essentially a spread deck. There's obviously Malamar Ultra Necrozma too, but let's talk about Giratina promo because Giratina promo is what's been pushing Malamar decks again. I'm not going to talk about Malamar spread, but there's also Malamar Ultra Necrozma Malamar and other Malamar decks that have the same benefit from Giratina promo. Prism, just Giratina. It's not a Prism, it's just Giratina. 130 HP, which is a good number to have, with an ability that means you may put this Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. If you do, you may put 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's a nice little chip. Maybe that 1 damage counter is the difference between a knockout and non-knockout. It's a really good ability, but its attack is 130 for 3 psychic energies. This is really important because we no longer have to play cards like Shining Lugia. It also has a fighting resistance. which is really cool. So Shining Lugia was a 4 energy attack that did 130, or like you were relying on its ability and on its first attack for 3 energies as 120. Being able to do 130 straight up is really, really good. Obviously, you have to damage your own bench, but in my testing, that has never been an issue. You damage like a Koko or maybe a Malamar. You can even slap things like Spell Tag onto Malamar so that if they are weakened and your opponent wants to knock them out, you can punish them by using Spell Tag. Spell Tag doing 4 damage counters to your opponent's Pokemon any way you like if they get knocked out by one of your opponent's attacks. Thanks to Giratina, we can now make Malamar a very potent spread deck. We have access to Shrine of Punishment, of course, Tapu Koko, being able to use Flying Flip, Shining Arceus, not on the slide, but it's a Pokemon that not only does 30 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, but also stops spread from on your side, which is really important because you are a deck that's weak to Shrine, it's weak to spread as well. And it is a 4 energy attack, but this deck will be playing DCE. Overall, we have non-GX attackers, we have GX attackers like the Necrozma GX, we have Dawnwings, we have a lot of options with Malamar now, and that's what makes this deck so cool, is it's so versatile. We even have fighting type attackers. You have Onix over there, 4 energy attack that just hits 120, which means you just straight up Oko Zoroark. It is a 4 energy attack, but like I mentioned earlier, we are playing DCEs now, so setting up these Pokemon are a lot easier. And we have this Larvitar here. Now, Larvitar we're going to talk more about on the Decidueye slide, but Larvitar, if one of your opponent's Pokemon have 3 or more damage counters on them, this attack does 70 more damage. So you hit for 80 for a DCE, which as a fighting type attacker, you're hitting Zoroark for weakness. And then you can put up enough damage counters on them or play down choice band or something and take Okos on Zoroark, which is really nice. For such an efficient attack cost, it's really strong. But Giratina being able to chain itself, I think the coolest thing about this deck is that you never have to search for an attacker ever again. Once you put a Giratina on board, if it gets knocked out, you just put it right back on board without having to search, without having to draw, without having to slap it down from your hand. It just goes directly from the discard pile right onto your board, which is incredibly strong because not only do you get to take advantage of its ability, but you get to just constantly attack over and over again. 3 Malamars on board means you can constantly set it up. Koko on your deck means you have free retreat. I really like Malamar. I do have a Malamar video that should have gone up today, but I wasn't able to edit it in time because now we have that new background stuff, so we'll have to do it later in the week. So Malamar video is coming up soon. You guys can get an example of what I was talking about. Weaknesses, knocking out Malamar. That's a pretty big weakness. But a huge weakness I found in this deck is Fuel Blower, because you are relying a lot on spell tag procs and Shrine of Punishment ticks. So whenever a blower happens, it kind of catches you off guard, which kind of ruins your strategy because you have to go into the game with a strategy on how you're going to spread damage. But if your opponent can stop you from doing that damage spreading, it does ruin your strat, which then in turn puts you maybe a turn or 2 behind, which is always kind of annoying. So it's not a deck. It's not an infallible deck, right? It has its weaknesses, but it's really strong. I mean, obviously it's strong. It just won the Tokyo Championship League, which is really impressive. Ooh, I'm talking for 30 minutes straight. I gotta get going. Ooh. All right, next deck to talk about, Buzzwole Ninetales. Buzzwoles have pretty much all moved to a Ninetales engine, and for good reason. Ninetales has the ability that once you evolve into Ninetales, you may, from your hand to your, I believe it's from your hand, right? You may search your deck for any 2 item cards and put them into your hand. So this is essentially say, hey, knock me out. I dare you. I'm gonna evolve into Ninetales and get 2 Beast Rings, or counter energy, or counter gain, I mean. Or escape board, or switch, or any useful item in the world. Like Buzzwole is so strong right now. It even has room to be teched out. Now, the 3rd place Buzzwole list, which I thought was really interesting, played a bunch of escape boards, played switches, played really cool things. You have access to Zeraora. You have obviously strong attackers like Buzzwole GX. You have Baby Buzzwole. You still have access to Diancie, but now we have counter gain here, and you have unit energy. Unit energy is fighting and fairies, so now Ninetales can attack. Ninetales has really strong attacks, which does 70 plus 30 bench snipe. This is really good against Lost March because you're knocking out all the Lost March attackers and putting snipe damage on the board for 2 energies or even 1 energy if you have access to counter gain. Counter gain is another counter card, which is if you're behind on prizes, all your attacks cost 1 energy less, 1 colorless energy less. So you can attack for 1 energy with Ninetales using 70-30 spread, or its new GX attack, which is knock out an Ultra Beast Pokemon. Its attack is literally just knock out an Ultra Beast Pokemon. Blacephalon, Naganadel, Buzzwole, 3 of the main ones to talk about. there's not really, I mean, technically you can knock out Xurkitree because it works past its ability, because you're not putting damage counters on it, you're just knocking it out. So even if you have a special energy attached to it, you will still be knocking out the Xurkitree, which I think is really, really cool. So you have more spread in this deck than you've had before, thanks to Ninetales. You have access to Lycanroc, which Lycanroc can appreciate counter gain, letting you use his GX attack for 1 energy. So you still have a strong GX attack. You have now 3 essentially strong GX attacks, depending on the matchup, right? And now you can just use Buzzwole better than before. Before, people were using Magcargo, and that did really well, but pretty much everybody in Japan has moved to the Ninetales format, a Ninetales based deck, and it's been better than ever in my opinion. The testing has been beyond absurd. This deck pops off like crazy. Brooklet Hill lets you get Beacon Vulpix, and if there's never a reason to not play Beacon Vulpix, right? Even Beacon Vulpix means you can search out your Pokemon easier. You can search out Ninetales for the following turn. It's really, really strong. I think having access to Brooklet Hill, being able to search out all the Pokemon that's Rockruff, that's Buzzwoles, and that's the Beacon Vulpix, and then just combo off all those cards, meaning you don't need Guzmas. You can play Draw Supporters, find a Lycanroc, slap it down, pull a Pokemon up, take a knockout, maybe even slap down Ninetales, search your items. You have so many good options in this deck now. You even have access. You can play Acerola in this deck, picking up things like a damage Vulpix, damage Lycanroc to reuse their abilities. Buzzwole and Ninetales, it's as strong as it's ever been. It does have weaknesses though, mainly because you're attacking with GX attackers. You are weak to non-GX decks that can OHKO you, specifically Lost March. Now, it really is just a big glaring weakness of playing Buzzwole, but it didn't stop it from making third. So it's still a really, really good deck. The next deck we're going to talk about, I believe this is the second to last deck before we get into the other decks. This is Decidueye and Ninetales. Now, this is more of a pet deck for me. Whenever I was playing Decidueye Zoroark, I did like top 3 League Cups with it, which made me really happy. I love Decidueye, and I haven't played Decidueye in a while because Decidueye hasn't been that good. But thanks to Ninetales, once again, Beacon Vulpix, Ninetales, searches rare candies, like it's a whole new world for us. We have access to Professor Elm, letting us search for all of our 60 HP Pokemon, which means we can play our 60 HP Vulpix, 60 HP Rowlets, get them all on the board, and then slap down Ninetales, get rare candies, evolve into Decidueye's Beacon a couple times. And the cool thing about Decidueye and Ninetales is that not only do you have this Feather Arrow Snipe, not only do you have access to cards like Super Boost, because you will be getting out multiple stage 2s in this deck. It's as long as you can turn 1 Elm, it's going to happen. And because Super Boost acts like a grass energy just in general as well, you have all these tech attackers for DCs as well. You have a Larvitar, like we mentioned earlier. Since this is a Feather Arrow deck, Larvitar is just an instant inclusion. We have Deoxys to deal with Buzzwole, since Buzzwole is a powerful deck again. Just choice band on Buzzwole, on a Deoxys, or just a couple Feather Arrows, you are going to take a knockout Deoxys. But because of how good these fire decks are, Alola Ninetales GX, the water one, seems really cool as well. You have an access to a really strong GX attack and Ice Path, but you have Ice Blade as well. If you hit 50 on a active, you hit 50. If you hit for weakness on the active, that's 100. So if you slap a choice band on there, you're going from 50, which 80 becomes 160, which means you're 1 Feather Arrow tick, and then you knock out Blacephalon. Maybe a couple more ticks, you knock out a Magcargo. So I think like you have all these cool options in Decidueye Ninetales that Decidueye Ninetales becomes a really, really big threat now that it's more consistent than ever. But the biggest weakness of this deck, and I know that my friend Nelson can attest to this, is that if you whiff your turn one Elm, it hurts a lot. This is one of those decks where I really want to play 4 Elms in and just do my best to land them as often as I can with like Lele's and stuff like that, because whiffing an Elm is so painful for Decidueye. Without the Elm, you're not getting out. I mean, of course, you can always just play Nest Balls and just try to I mean, you can play Netball in this deck too. That's the cool thing, is that Netball gets you Rowlet, and Rowlet is probably the most important card. You can always just get Vulpix turn 2. Ideally, you don't have to, but you can. But having access to Netball and Elm is really strong. So, like, if you shuffle draw and you manage to get out 3 Rowlets turn 1 or turn 2 and 1 Vulpix, then you're always good, right? But you are relying on getting that perfect setup. But if you get that set up, you're in a really good position. There's not really too much to talk about other than that. I'm going to take more water. I'm going to drink more water because I've been talking for a long time and I'm getting real tired. The last deck that I'm going to talk about as far as a Lost Thunder deck goes, now there's a lot of other Lost Thunder decks out there. We have access to things like, what's that thing called? Genesect and stuff like that. But I'm mainly talking about the decks that I've tested that I feel like I'm really confident in, and that I think are going to be really good. So Granbull, Granbull is a deck that I don't care what anyone says. This is a legitimate deck. It made 9th in the Tokyo tournament, and Granbull is just the perfect. It hits the perfect numbers while being a perfect type. You're a fairy type attacker that for 1 energy hits 30, but if you have an empty hand, you hit for 130 more damage. So you hit 160 as a non-GX attacker for 1 energy. The caveat is you have to have an empty hand. How do you deal with having an empty hand? Well, you play a heavy Magcargo or Oranguru engine, and that way you can constantly be able to draw into the exact cards you need. Ultra Balls, maybe even, I know that the deck that made 9th played a 1-up treasure to help within as well. You can play Apricorn Maker, a bunch of Nest Balls, a bunch of Great Balls, a bunch of items because you don't care if you don't care about Trash Lanch because you're also a 1GX attacking deck. It's all about having a really good setup. You have access to cards like Ditto Prism as well, which means you have access to techs. But yeah, 2 Orangurus, 2 Magcargos, 2 Granbulls. That is your perfect board setup. That way you're drawing a bunch or not that much if you don't need to. You have Magcargo to help you decide where you're going to top deck, which will help you in turn make your hand empty when you need it to be. But one card that I don't see many people talking about, which I think is really cool in Granbull, is Fairy Charm. Also, you have Shrine of Punishment because it's a Shrine of Punishment deck. I don't think I really need to mention that, but just in case. Now we have Fairy Charm here. Fairy Charm, we have 4 different ones for Psychic, Fighting, Dragon, and Grass. I believe those are the 3 typings. But Fairy Charm, let me try to read it out for you guys exactly. Here it is. Prevent all damage done to the fairy Pokemon that this card is attached to by attacks from your opponent's type that this charm is. GX and EX though, not just all Pokemon. So if you feel like you're gonna be playing it, if you're worried about Buzzwole decks, put a 1-of in there, slap it onto your Granbull, and just keep attacking until they eventually play Blower or something like that. If you feel like you're gonna be playing against Rayquaza, you can slap that thing onto the Rayquaza. Although you're gonna be OKing Rayquaza because of weakness anyways. With Psychic, if you feel like you're gonna be playing against Malamar, Giratina, you can slap that on there too, and then you can just really deal with Giratina very well. So as you can see, the Granbull deck is really, really cool. It's a lot easier to play. It's a lot easier to have an empty hand than I originally thought until I actually built the deck and I played it. It's so easy to have an empty hand. This deck plays 4 Apricorn Makers to help you get a bunch of ball cards that you can just slap down, and you just have an empty hand and you're attacking like crazy all the time. But there is one weakness to this deck, and that is the deck is actually really difficult to play. It's a very high skill deck because you have to be very aware of the cards that you have in your deck and what will make you stuck. You can't just be playing your Ultra Balls like crazy because the second that you do, you'll get to late game, you'll have no Ultra Balls and no way to discard. You have to like put an energy in the discard pile kind of right away so that your energy recycle system is never a dead card. You want to make sure you don't have too many shrines in your opening in your hand because if your opponent does not bump your shrine, if your shrine is there sticking, you can't play it down again, which is you have to discard it with Ultra Ball. It's very high skill, and that's what makes this deck kind of difficult to play because you will have those turns where you're not attacking for 160, which you're attacking for 30, maybe the choice band you're hitting for 60, maybe with shrine damage. I mean, you're not like in a horrible position because you're still a single prize attacking deck, but if you're not taking Okos every turn, you're not going to be in the best position either. So Granbull has its problems, but I think it's a very, very strong deck. But that's going to be all the decks that I'm going to talk about that I've actually sat down and tested very heavily, or like I played some games with and stuff like that. I think the deck is very, very, very strong. I think these decks are all very, very strong in their own right, with their own weaknesses. Now let's talk about some decks that all gain something in one way or another. The first one I want to talk about is actually Rotom. Now we do have this new card called Adventure Satchel, which lets you search for your deck for 2 tools and put them into your hand, which is beautiful for Rotom because now Rotom doesn't have to play like 20 tool cards to consistently get 9 in discard pile. But we have all these different Rotoms. Specifically, the second one is going to be the most important one because it hits for 120 for free if you activate its ability. We have all these cool new tools too. We talked about Spell Tech earlier, but we also have Choice Helmet. Choice Helmet is a tool that means you take 30 less damage from attacks, meaning it's a lot harder to knock out some of your Rotom cards. We have all these cool, unique Rotoms that all have their own cool, unique attacks, and now they can all attack for free. We have Spread Rotoms. We have Rotoms that snipe on the bench. Specifically, we have ones that discard special energies. We have different types, so you can hit for weaknesses. We still have access to cards like a Skateboard and Choice Helmet and Choice Band and things like that. We have a lot of really, really cool cards that Rotom can abuse now, and I think Rotom might actually be a legitimate deck now. So I've always been a fan of Rotom. A lot of people have been a fan of Rotom, but Rotom seems legit because we have 2 new, very important, very strong tools, which means that we now have easier ways to discard. And because you're probably going to be playing heavy Psychic Rotom here, you can play cards like Mysterious Treasure as well, which will help you discard your tools. We have Alolan Exeggutor here. Alolan Exeggutor does 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each different type of basic energy in your discard pile, but you can only add 100 damage its way. So you can hit 120 consistently for 1 grass energy. Being 160 HP attacking Pokemon, you're really tanky, which means you can what's it called? You can abuse cards like Max Potion. Sorry about the cut there, guys. But you have access to Shrine of Punishment. But more importantly, you have access to Shuckle, which really speeds up your process. Being able to slap down a Shuckle, putting 3 types of energy from your deck to your discard pile means you're able to accelerate the cost that you need for this deck a lot faster. But you also have access to cards like Sceptile. Now, it's weird to say that you can play Sceptile as a stage 2 Pokemon to slap it into Exeggutor, but you have that Grovyle card, lets you search for cards, lets you search for Pokemon, grass Pokemon, put them into your hand. You have access to Elm, and you have access to, what's it called? You have access to Sceptile that makes you immune to Ultra Beast Pokemon if you have grass energies attached. So you have this really cool, strong immunity. So Exeggutor, feel like a really, really strong non-GX deck. We have Rayquaza here. Rayquaza I have down here specifically because we now have Zeraora Rayquaza as a deck. A lot of people, I'm skeptical about this as well, but I think there's some merit here. You don't have to play Vikavolt anymore, which is good. You have access to Shuckle. You have access to Zeraora, which gives you free retreat and a really strong GX attack to accelerate your board. And you have access, and now you can use cards like Wishful Baton or Experience Shares again. You have Satchel that can help you find these cards really early, so you don't have to worry about losing them. So you can keep constant pressure on the board as well. We have Latios Prism you can abuse, and we even have Naganadel. The non-GX Naganadel can help accelerate energies onto your board to make Rayquaza's damage still hit higher and higher every turn. And you can use Beast Ring now because you have Naganadel. Now Rayquaza has a bunch of new tools that can make the deck strong even without need to play Vikavolt. So I think Rayquaza I think that's a deck I definitely want to see people test and try to see if it's ultimately any better than playing Rayquaza Vikavolt, or if it's more consistent, which is important too because you're not always going to get turn 2 Vikavolt, which is pretty bad for you sometimes. But if it does end up being consistent, it's definitely something I want to see people talk about. So it's really, really cool. I do like that a lot. And the last one I want to talk about before we talk about like a bunch of things I don't have on the slide is going to be Zoroark. Now, the main reason why I'm talking about Zoroark is not to talk about the decks you can play, but the fact that Zoroark has all these cool tools. You have access to Ditto Prism, which helps you evolve into like Lycanroc, Magcargo, Ninetales, which you have access to Ninetales GX now. And then Zoroark itself. So you have Ditto Prism. You have Counter Gain, which means your Zoroark can attack for 1 energy. Your Lycanroc can attack. You can use his GX attack for 1 energy. Your Ninetales can attack for 1 energy. All thanks to Counter Gain. You have access to Custom Catcher, which is a card that I'm gonna read Custom Catcher for you guys. I don't have it on screen, but I'll read it out specifically for you guys. It's another thing similar to Puzzle, where if you play 2 at the same time, you add an extra effect. If you play 1 of them, draw cards until you have 3 into your hand, which is already not too bad. And if you play 2, choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and switch it with their active Pokemon. So it's a lifesaver if you play 2 at the same time, which you can drop Ninetales, get 2, and then pull them up. So you have access to all these new things, and then obviously you can always play cards like Counter Energy. We have a bunch of brand new Counter Energy Pokemon in this deck. I believe there's a Tapu worth mentioning. There is a Victini as well. So you have new typings to abuse with Counter Energy, which means decks like Passimian will do better because Passimian loves having those Counter Energy Pokemon. But yeah, Zoroark has a bunch of new toys, so Zoroark's gonna be as strong as ever. There's no reason for Zoroark to get any worse, and that's gonna be the video, guys. It's been a long video, about an hour long. I tried to make it relatively short by talking quickly. I hope you guys like the video though. There's other decks in here. I know that my buddy Nelson was talking about playing a Naganadel, like a baby Naganadel attacking deck that attacks with Naganadel, but use a Stack Attack of GX to make Naganadel more tanky, and then you can play Max Potion and heal, and then it just accelerate between a bunch of different Naganadels. There's the Genesect GX, which lets you attach 2 tools. It has a 3 metal energy attack cost, and hits for, I believe it's 130, or it's a GX attack hits for 190 straight. So nothing special about it, but you can attach 2 tools. So you can either make it really tanky by attaching like two frying pans, or you can attach 2 choice bands to make it hit really hard, or it's some combination of the 2, right? And then you can use Magazone to attach a bunch of energies to it, because we really don't have any other way to accelerate energies onto Genesect, because it is a 3 energy attack cost still. We have Ninetales GX, the fairy one. You can play a control version where you play a bunch of like the fairy charms, maybe some maybe a bunch of other tech Pokemon, and like think cards like Faba, and removing stadiums and special energies from the board completely, putting them in the lost zone. So you have Ninetales control that you can try out. We have Gardevoir. Gardevoir has a new Xerneas Prism Star. That means you can you have a good non-GX attacker that hits for 160. You also have access to Professor Elm again, which is like a new Bridget for that deck. So all these decks get a little bit stronger, which I think is really, really cool. So I'm really excited for Lost Thunder. This is what I mean by Lost Thunder is a definite like new best set as far as like just playability goes. We have so many cool playable cards. So don't forget to drop a like on this video if you guys like this style of content. Let me know if you guys do like this style of content though, because I'm willing to make more of these videos. This is actually a lot of fun for me. I definitely can't wait to do it again. Don't forget to drop a like if you haven't already. Check out our sponsors at Guardians Gaming, and subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the road to 5K. We're almost there, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.